They don't want to play under pressure. They don't want to play under stress. And Tottenham's story is this.
Hey, I've seen this one. This is a classic.
Yeah, but Tottenham, it's the history of the Tottenham.
Big man was trying to get fired, and it looks like he succeeded. You gotta respect the hustle. Things haven't been going so great over at Tottenham Hotspur FC. Within a 3-week period, they've been knocked out of the FA Cup, the Champions League, and have significantly loosened their grip on a spot in next year's UCL, with Newcastle, Liverpool, even Brighton breathing down their necks and with games in hand. Funnily enough, all of this came after a strong finish to last season and a decent start to this one. A lot of us wouldn't have been too surprised if things went swimmingly for them this year, but that's exactly what makes it funny. If you're not a Spurs fan, at least. If we're all being completely honest, this collapse and all the negativity surrounding the club represents a pattern that's been well known for a very, 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 very long time. The history of the Tottenham, as a great philosopher once said. Players who are considered amongst the global elite that just don't seem to play to the level everyone knows they can consistently. Following this, the manager, the board, the landscapers, they all catch flack. Don't get me wrong, this season is far from over and things could certainly turn around for them, but they're not really inspiring confidence in me, if I'm being completely honest. Today, we're going to talk about Antonio Conte and Tottenham Hotspur, a team that continues to be perhaps the most confusing club in Europe. Yo, what's going on everyone? Really hope you're all doing well. I'm Tinashe and welcome back to the channel. Don't mind my voice, I'm a little bit sick. Tottenham Hotspur are in a strange spot. For the third time in 2 years, Spurs appointed a manager that was well known to specialize in winning in the short term. Both managers that aren't afraid to push every single button of their players in hopes that they inspire them, but also knowing full well that they could very well incite hate amongst those in the dressing room and lose all their authority. It's a calculated gamble, I guess. Surprise, surprise, just over halfway into his first full season in charge, and the second of those managers is on course to continue the cycle. We're all probably familiar with Antonio Conte's ability to let everything on his mind just flow out in front of camera. Heck, Spurs experienced this about 3 months after hiring the guy. Last February, after a 1-0 loss to Burnley, he basically came out and said he wasn't the man for the job after losing 4 of his last 5 with them. Somehow, the one match he won was against Man City. It makes no sense. Fast forward to March 2023, and his comments are a tad bit more scathing. Following a match against bottom place Southampton, where Spurs threw away a 3-1 lead to draw 3-3, Antonio Conte went on a 10-minute rant about the club and its ambitions, or rather, lack thereof, speaking only briefly about the actual result and going into detail about the inadequacy of each moving piece at the club. He accused the players of being selfish and only playing for themselves, and when it was brought up that perhaps the fact that his contract is expiring at the end of the season with no real signs of a renewal was perhaps affecting their motivation, he kind of just said that everyone keeps making excuses for the players. There are 10 games to go and some people think we can fight. Fight for what with this spirit, this attitude, this commitment? I am not used to this position. I'm really upset and everyone has to take their responsibility. If they want to continue in this way, they can change the manager, a lot of managers, but the situation cannot change. Believe me. Extremely harsh words, extremely unprofessional, and also a tad bit of a lack of accountability. But how wrong is he, actually? The dude clearly isn't the right guy for the job. I think we're all pretty much in agreement for that. The tactics, the play style, they just don't really gel well, and he's got to take a lot of the blame for that. And sure, the players haven't really showed up for him at times, but I think, in the grand scheme of things, the fact that this appointment hasn't worked out is probably more of an indictment on the club's board rather than the abilities of Antonio Conte. If all of us at home could profile the kind of manager Antonio Conte is, surely Daniel Levy and the gang could too. I've spoken already about the need to revert back to our core DNA of playing attacking, entertaining football, and I believe Nuno is the man. Levy said this just prior to hiring Nuno Espirito Santo, a man who is not exactly known for his free-flowing, attacking, entertaining football. In fact, he's probably closer in style to the pragmatism of Jose Mourinho that we're all familiar with. Heck, Mourinho even coached him back when he was the Porto manager. Strange decision by the board. I mean, he only lasted about 17 games before he was ultimately given the boot, and of course this came after losing one of the biggest games of the season. El Sakiko, Manchester United vs Tottenham Hotspur. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer vs Nuno Espirito Santo. Both teams were playing horrendous football at the time. Truly disgusting. As the legend said, the losing manager was fated to be sacked in the morning and replaced by Antonio Conte, while the winning manager would live to fight another day. The only issue was that both teams wanted their managers to be sacked and for Antonio Conte to replace them, meaning that even if they won, they actually lost. And even if they lost, they actually won. It was an interesting period in human history, I must admit. Also, hindsight is quite a funny thing, as I often wake up in cold sweats thinking about what it would have been like for United if Conte was signed instead of Ten Hag. I am shaking just thinking about it. Anyway, Conte took over at Spurs literally 48 hours after this match, and again, anyone that would describe his play style as free-flowing would sooner be accused of having lost the plot than anything else. I mean, if we're being completely fair, his first half season wasn't perfect, but it wasn't dreadful. A 4th place finish by the end of it, meaning Champions League football. Not a bad deal considering Spurs were coming off of 6th and 7th place finishes in succession. And even still, if we're being even more fair, they may yet finish in that spot again once the current season is over and done with. But even if that were to happen, I doubt many Spurs fans will be all too optimistic about what the future holds for their club, especially if Conte remains in charge. The kind of football that's being played is the kind that you can only really appreciate and, tolerate if the results are overwhelmingly positive, which, up to this point, they have not been. It's hard to watch. It really is. Slow, steady, non-proactive counter-attacking football that relies on quick breaks and bursts of brilliance from the front men, or rather front man. Harry Kane has continued to perform for them with 21 goals in the league so far, despite all that's been happening around them. Meanwhile, the rest of their forwards have 8 goals in the league combined, and Son has 6. Conte has historically been a successful manager. I don't think anyone can really argue that, but even he seemed to have reservations about joining this club, refusing them on their first requests and then accepting 6 months later. He says it was because he was still emotionally attached to Inter Milan at the time that they approached him. I'm sure joining them at a much more turbulent stage with £15 million per year guaranteed helped alleviate the emotional stress. It would do the same for me, I can't lie. On a more serious note, he is under some very real stresses outside of football. The fact that he's lost 3 very close friends over the last few months, the fact that he had surgery to remove his gallbladder not too long ago, you can only imagine that this has been a taxing period for him. All the same, Spurs are in the position that they're in, and most people don't really consider the bigger picture when they speak about it, which is a shame. Speaking of the bigger picture, almost 2 years ago, I asked a question that many people have pondered from time to time, but I don't think anyone has come up with a definitive answer to. Is Tottenham Hotspur a big football club? At least in the same breath as a Man City, an Arsenal, a Manchester United? Of course, there are levels to this, but at the time, I came to the conclusion that, yeah, they are a big football club. A recent Champions League final appearance, recent runners-up medals in the league, consistent top 4 finishes, a stadium on par with the best of the best. Seriously, that thing is beautiful. But the more time passes, the stranger the decisions that the board makes, the continuous drama, kind of makes me want to retract that statement. Over the years, you've always gotten the feeling that this club can excel when you look at them from a man-for-man perspective. Harry Kane, Son Heung-min, Hugo Lloris, Christian Eriksen, Moussa Dembele, Jan Vertonghen, Toby Alderweireld are just a few names that come to mind and that I would consider being world-class at Spurs over the past decade or so. To not only walk away from that period with nothing, but also stagnate, even regress since the peak of it all, is kind of tough. Especially when they were expected to improve this year. At this point, you may be asking, but surely they have improved over last year. I mean, look at the table. For that, you can thank Liverpool and Chelsea for losing all their ball-playing abilities, except when Man United visit Anfield, of course. All of a sudden, everyone remembers how to score goals, huh? Unbelievable. Anyway, all I'm trying to say is that the last season, with 28 games played, they had 48 points, 1 less than they currently have. A numerical improvement, yes, but that was only good enough for 7th place at this point. If the teams below them win their games in hand, it won't look like too much of an improvement, I think. So how do you solve this problem? I guess the answer that I'm about to give has been completely played out and said by very many people over the years, but it doesn't make it any less true. A rebuild that actually takes into consideration the promises that Daniel Levy made all those years ago, a manager with a long-term view, players and a playstyle that fit into one another, as well as a progressive horizon that actually makes sense for the club. With £155 million spent prior to this season, the players that have come in haven't lived up to those price tags in my eyes. But that doesn't mean they're bad players. Who knows? Maybe they just need patience and the right system built around them. Over and above that, the team does have some pretty good young players to build something from. And ironically, Spurs doesn't even have to look too far for a good example on the potential steps that are necessary. Levy might not like it, but trusting the process is something that's worked out pretty well in North London lately. And there we have it. Let me know what you guys think about Spurs and Antonio Conte and this entire situation. Feel free to follow all the socials. That's all from me today. Hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you're having a great day. Cheers, and I will catch you in the next one.